You ever feel like your money is scattered, like it exists, but it not not in a way that actually moves your life forward? Like that's what we talked about in the last episode, and we're moving forward even more in this episode. And I just want to say, like, there's a lot going on. Life is crazy. We have ADHD. Like you guys are probably noticing, like we are doing this thing messy because we are moving forward. We want to get this information out to you guys. We want to share, and we want to make it to where it's like, um, you know, ship it ugly, don't ship it broke. Like we want to get this stuff in front of people, and I think it's the same way moving forward from what you shared with me, Caleb, on the like as we're moving through this hierarchy here. The first ones are like you got to do them. Like you got to do that first stage. Some of those you got to do them right so you don't go to jail.
Right.
But as we move forward, it's more about like get them moving, like make the decisions and move forward, and you can adjust as you go. Hey, welcome to the Doing Business with ADHD podcast. Have you ever noticed how getting work feels personal, doing work feels overwhelming, getting paid feels awkward, and building wealth feels impossible? It's not because you're bad at business. It's because your business wasn't built for ADHD. Let's change the rules. For our disclaimer, we are not doctors, we are not therapists, we are just two guys who have beat the odds and are building business with our ADHD and both smiling. Like that's the big thing. We're building it in a way that works for us, and we just want to share our experience, we want to make it a safe place, and we wanted to be an example of talking about this so more people wouldn't feel isolated. So just to back up a little bit, Caleb, last time we talked about, I'm going to change the words a little bit, just kind of, this is how I'm carrying them with me. And the idea is like, you set up your business, right? That baseline. So you set up your business, you get all this stuff taken care of. The next one is, now you set it up so it's protected. So you set up your business, now you're protecting it. And then the next one was kind of getting that runway. Like your cash reserves up. Like how do you have the runway in case something goes sideways? You've got liquid money that, you can liquidate it. You have money to your emergency fund. And then we dove into, starting about taxes and moving up. So that's where we are.
Yeah, that
carry it
sounds
from there.
good. And for like Jake said, we're just doing this thing kind of raw and authentic here, just to make sure it actually got started to begin with, because it took us forever to get to it, and now we did it, and now it's going. Like I'm in the process of building a studio, but of course, as one goes to build a studio and more customized office space in their house, they find mold in some of the rafters of the ceiling in the garage that we're turning into a studio with like a homeschool room off to the side. So it's going to be awesome when it's done, but so of course naturally this slows down for a while, hence the virtual background and hence all the child noise outside. It's a casualty of having all the kids and homeschooling and all that. But honestly, I think a lot of you listening probably have this going on in your own homes, maybe even while you're listening right now. It's just how life goes. It is fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So back to tax planning. It's one of those interesting things. It needs to be a living, breathing strategy that you keep revisiting, ideally quarterly, annually at the minimum. And it's honestly a reason why I became an advisor. I don't think I shared this last time, but I was trying to get help from accountant when I started my first business, and like asked for advice, and like if I got any answers, they were short. They were like not really even unique to me in any way, like didn't answer my actual question, and he was kind of annoyed to be asked. And I was like, well, hold on, I have so many questions here about this, like this is all I get. And like I guess at that moment, like my story kind of took a turn where like I want to become that which I'm seeking right now, which I don't know. Like I want to be a one-stop shop of sorts to help people on that journey. So it's interesting, like tax planning. I am not licensed to go represent somebody before the IRS right now. Nor do I really like that. I mean, I did have a phone call this morning. A guy's getting letters from the IRS, nastygrams, and arguing back and forth, and I'm helping him through that as well. But like, I can't go actually stand in a tax court and do that. That's a very different ball of wax. But still, like, that's a part of it, right? And that's not uncommon. A lot of my ADHD business owners are in squabbles with the IRS. Oh, they're saying I didn't pay taxes back from 2019. Oh, they say I didn't have my spouse withhold anything on the, like, and now the penalty is like, so it's real. I mean, you think about taxes over the years. how did they get Al Capone? Right? It was for tax fraud ultimately, and I have no idea. I'm assuming he's probably neurodivergent and like a sinister, full of malice kind of way. I don't know, but it, tax planning, like death and taxes are the two certainties in life, as Benjamin Franklin so aptly said in his last letter that he wrote to a friend, and yet they can be planned for. Right? I think a lot of retirees fall into this trap, business owners and non-business owners, of, oh, I get a tax deduction for putting money into this pre-tax IRA or my 401k with the business. That's amazing. I'm limited to usually 7 grand a year in today's climate, 8 grand a year if I'm age 50 or older per person. So my spouse and I both can. And that's pretty great. I get a tax break. I can put in like 14 grand a year. And sure, maybe it's taxable someday, but I'm not going to think about that now, let alone the fact that I'm looking at a drop in the bucket now versus a couple buckets in the future once this thing is compounded and grown. I'm going to pay tax on that rather than the little drips out here. So it really pays to think about that. Inside of a business, you can do what's called a solo 401k, which is an amazing tool, right? It's a means of getting at least 70K saved for retirement from your business. As long as you have the cash flow to do that, you can shove 70 in there and it can all grow either completely tax free for the future, or it can be a huge tax deduction that you get right now that you get to apply to this year's income and is really going to help in a year that perhaps you have a high income. And so there's not always one right answer of like, oh, you should always do Roth over pre-tax all the time. But I tend to feel that way in general for younger people, especially if they're making less than about $500,000 a year. Usually Roth is going to win. But you do have to think about those times of what if the income spikes that year? Well, now you can do a little pre-tax to get it under there. Like there's a bunch of games we can play, right? And even looking down a little lower on the net worth and income asset spectrum, let's look at like 100 grand. Well, based on your family size, you may or may not be getting any kind of government benefits that help you out there. Well, now suddenly you can do things with your business income, contributing to those accounts, buying a big SUV over a certain weight poundage in the business, and you get to do a Section 179 complete deduction for all that. Deduct the whole cost of the thing from your business that year, bringing your income effectively much lower, which also impacts some of the aid that you qualify for, right? So that's substantial. Now you can possibly get free healthcare for your kids, maybe for yourself as a business owner. That's massive, right? Just by lowering your taxable income in a year, suddenly you can qualify for these things. And
that's like 6-figure savings if you can play those levers right. Yeah.
Literally, like no joke. Average health insurance cost out of pocket is like $800 a month for one adult. And then if you might get a tax credit subsidy if you're below a certain income threshold, that knocks it down to $400 a month or zero. And like that's the whole question mark here. Like it's amazing the kind of games you can play legally and ethically as a business owner to really make that work. Or just clumping. You're like, okay, this year I'm going to just clump all the stuff into one year and have like a really high deduction year, and I'm just going to get all these free perks. And then the next 2 years I won't. Or instead of having like 3 years of kind of meh, you just get one really great year and then 2 not so good years. So there's a lot to be done there, a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
Probably move on before I get too deep in the weeds.
Well, real quick, I want to, like, we're talking about some of the stuff in its experience that I wouldn't have known had I not made enough mistakes over the last 20-something years. Like, I found things stumbling in the dark to begin with, and then finally found out I could bring somebody in. And this is what I want people to think about. Like, when you talk about growing wealth, it is overwhelming, especially with ADHD, because we either are going to be overwhelmed and run from it, or we're going to hyper-focus and possibly not actually do anything, not get our work done. We already have a business that we're doing. And I always think of it as like, when you're learning a new board game, right? So if you're, I don't know, Ticket to Ride, whatever, Wingspan, how about that? That's an interesting game. But if you ever try to play Wingspan and somebody in the room does not already know how to play this game, it's going to be a nightmare. Yeah. You always, like, it's like, who is the friend that already knows the rules? Who is the friend that already does this? And that's where I like to think about, like, when it comes to getting help with financial planning and stuff, it's like, in the tax planning, it's like, have a friend who knows what they're doing. They already know the rules to the game. It's going to be a lot more enjoyable for you. And, you know, it's kind of like, what about this and this and this? And they're going to point you, steer you in the right directions, and you're going to enjoy the game, as opposed to, you know, hey, I'm sure you've been there, Caleb, but you're sitting around and okay, you have 5 kids. You're sitting down maybe trying to learn to play a new kids game together or whatever, and all the kids have to sit still while like mom and dad are reading the directions real fast to try and play the game, and it just becomes a nightmare. Everything falls apart. The same thing happens to us when we try to play these grown-up games as an ADHD business owner, is all of our executive function, our brains are starting to chase all of the other things, and then we feel guilty because we're like, well, I just haven't gotten to it. I'll get to it later. And then what happens? Well, the year comes around and the IRS comes knocking, and you're like, whoops, I wish I had read the rules, or I wish I had a friend. So I just go back to like, there are points that, there are certain things that we do, and that planning, even if it's just, like you said, there's quarterly or annual. When we first started out, my wife and I, it was like, we just had one meeting a year was the first thing, where we said, this is the stuff, this is the chaos that's around us. Look at all of our papers. Help us, point us in the right direction, and put a few things in place for us. And then at the end of the year, help us clean up the mess and pay the taxes, and we'll move from there. So I just want to say, don't get overwhelmed by the stuff we're talking about with growing wealth. It is a game, and if you need help, find somebody who already knows the rules so that you can get back to doing your part. So that's my segue. Sorry. Back at it, Caleb.
Oh, thanks for the segue there. That's huge, Jake. Honestly, people just bring me a grocery bag full of folders and documents from 6 years ago. I'm looking at one under my desk right now, literally. And sometimes documents I see are older than me. Occasionally, not too often anymore. But it's not like when you go to the hospital and then you're like, why are all the nurses and doctors younger than me? That's weird. But no, I mean just the disorganization, and you just know that they feel that, they know it to some level. They don't really know what's going on or have a clear path to it, and I just feel a ton of empathy in those moments for them. It's okay, this starts out with a 30-minute call, we're just going through virtual together, in person, an hour, but 6 months from now you're going to feel so much better about all this, and then the next 6 months we're just going to put all the fine tuning on it. So you let me a really great segue here. I should get out of tax planning before I spend all day there. Let me move on from there to strategic debt. And how you left me a great segue is that you talked about favorite board games. My favorite board game growing up and to this day is Monopoly. And so
Wow.
nobody wants to play it with me. I don't know if that's just because I'm very annoying to play with or because I'm good. I don't know, because nobody plays with me.
We had a sign in our game room that said, if they're not weeping, you're not winning. That is the competitive gaming family that I grew up in. So Monopoly is one of those that's tears and blood have been shed over the game of Monopoly.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful... Yeah, I would love to come play Monopoly with you guys sometime. We should totally do that.
I'm game.
So I just shared my screen here again, like I did last week. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, this is just a page on my website. I've got the link to that in the show notes, as well as a PDF of the graphic that I'm referring to. I created this thing called the Founder's Hierarchy of Financial Needs, and I trademarked that puppy. That's what the little TM means there. It just means I didn't feel like paying for the copywriting process, so I just put a TM. It's like a beware of dog sign. But yeah, that's true. So... Anyways, it's like Dave Ramsey's Baby Steps, but it's drawn from the most cutting-edge research that my industry has to offer around business owners and the checklist to wealth. So again, we're here kind of in the midsection. This is stuff you revisit annually or quarterly. We talk tax planning. Right now, strategic debt. And what I find interesting here, Jake, is not every industry is a great fit for this one. For some people, I'm like, okay, that's kind of it. I suspect for you and I...
I'll be honest, you mentioned this one, and I was kind of I don't know how we're going to cover this because, I'm looking at it going, we'll see. But as we've had conversations, I understand there are places that this works.
Yeah.
But in my business, there's not necessarily a need for this. So anyway, but yeah, I did want to point out that it's I was looking at this one going, I don't know how we're going to do this.
Yeah. So it's funny. And my role in it isn't so much of a business expansion, marketing type of here's where you need to be using all this power. For me, it's more how do you draw this power? I can give you this tool and then like you got to find someone who's really good at telling you where to use this tool, because you could really screw yourself over or really help yourself, right? So for guys like us, we're both service-based industries. I suspect if we did paid social media ads, we could probably see some growth in our businesses, but it's probably not the optimal way to go. Like for me, I definitely feel like it's not the optimal. And besides, I'd rather have people who are a little warmer than just a stranger who clicked on a paid ad somewhere at the end of the day.
Yep.
But there's still something to be said for it. At the bare minimum, like if you're early out or starting up, just helping to get better marketing collateral starting out could be a use for debt. Again, I don't want to go too deep into the like when to use debt as much, though I certainly dabble there with clients. I think to serve this time best, I'll just talk about like what kinds are available. So, and why. Let me start with the why, actually. Everybody has this big debate out there between stocks and real estate. Like I'm sure you've heard them all, Jake, right? You heard the bigger pockets people, oh, real estate all the time. And you heard other people talking about stocks.
Yeah.
So really the answer is usually both, but real estate often wins in raw accumulation numbers. So if you're let's just pretend here, and I'm gonna kind of risk going down the weeds a little here. So if you have like 20 grand to invest, well, you could use that 20 grand as a down payment on a $100,000 townhouse that supposedly exists somewhere in today's world. That's a 20% down payment. And let's say that house appreciates 5% that year. So it gains 5 grand in value. Okay, so on your 20,000 down payment, you've just gained 5K in value. That's assuming like your rental income just netted even. Like from a raw appreciation, you just gained 5 grand. That was a 25% return on investment. You plop down 20, and now you've grown it to 25. It's illiquid, doesn't help. For the stocks, let's say a stock grows by 10%. So you put your 20 grand into a stock, it grows 10% that year. Pretty average return for the stock market, averaged across 100 years. Well, great, you just made 2 grand. So the real estate had half the return, but more than twice the growth because of leverage. And that's the key here. This isn't a commentary on which one's better. It depends on what you're trying to do with your money. Are you trying to get filthy rich? Are you trying to retire comfortably? There's a lot that you can do in between.
You've mentioned this a couple of times. It's like pick your goals. And with ADHD, sometimes we forget to just stop and go, yeah, at the end of the game. So like you're talking about playing Monopoly. At the end of the game, what do I want? I would always joke because my brothers always went for Park Place and Boardwalk. And I was like, you know what? Great. You want them, fine. I don't want them until the end of the game. Like, I want everything else at the end of the game. You know, like, that's how you win. And, like, when it comes to this one, you were talking about real estate or stock market. It's like, well, which one? Which goal do you have? And then, again, talking to that friend, talking to the person who knows the rules of the game. What do you actually want at the end? Okay, great. Then this is the strategy for the game. Like, if you want to hold Boardwalk the whole game, then go get it. If you know,
hit you for 2 grand.
It's like, you know, which game do you want to play is really what you're picking. Where do you want to end up? Okay, well, this is the game. So, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to point out, like, I completely get that, and especially with ADHD, we get so caught up in playing the game or making the decisions or figuring out what we're doing that we forget to go, that's where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And honestly, like, it sounds like you're kind of there. I'm at the place in my business where, like, I don't want to use debt to win my game. It just feels like a big risk. My business fuels my lifestyle, not the other way around. So if I hamper it to debt, then, you know, that's going to really slow my capacity to have it be a lifestyle practice, because now I'm under the gun, like the borrower slave to the lender, in a sense. Yeah. But at the same time, it can really be this expansive powerhouse. So like anybody starting a big manufacturing company obviously takes on tons and tons of debt, outside investors and whatnot to do it. I'm going to try and steer clear of some of those more exotic things. And let's just say like a guy opens a restaurant. Okay, so like what does he have available? And these are actually some folks in a local area pizza shop. I'm thinking of some people I've talked to about this here locally, right? So, all right, a couple ways to do it. Can we cash flow it? Well, maybe. Maybe one spouse keeps working a decent W-2 job. The other one does most of the pizza shop jobs, and then their teenage child. That business is now very sturdy. They don't have debt. They only fail when they quit, or if they can't sell enough pizzas to just pay the rent plus the purchase price of the existing pizza shop that was there that they just rolled into their name. So that's true, but what if they didn't want to do the W-2? What if they both wanted to work there full time and like, okay, this is it. This is our family thing that we all do. They could have taken a loan against a 401k. And so that's certainly an option. You can borrow up to half of your 401k value, leaving the money invested. Some custodians kind of put that money that you borrow in cash. Some of them allow it to stay in stocks. The latter is much better, very custodian dependent. You can just borrow against your retirement accounts that way. The interest rate, you're technically kind of paying yourself. It sounds sketchy to talk about it that way. Far worse for like borrowing from a whole life insurance policy or an IUL. That always gets talked up, right? People on TikTok and everywhere are always on about, oh, infinite banking, you become your own bank, blah, blah, blah. Like, sure, there's so many fees attached to that, and the interest is just atrocious. You can borrow against stocks that you hold that are outside of a retirement account and like a non-qualified brokerage account, it might be called, or an individual or a joint. So this one is actually pretty good. I like this for business owners because the money's flexible. It's not locked up in a retirement account. People trying to buy a second home, let's say they built up like 100,000, 500K, a million, whatever. They can borrow half of that again, just a line of credit against that pretty much. And then if that money goes up, then suddenly they can borrow more. But if it goes down, they can borrow less. And that's a little bit of the risk. So you don't want to be too close to it. Or if you do, and then the market dives some, then they go, oh, wait, you're borrowing more than you're allowed to. You need to make up that difference. You make sure you have some cash to the side. But it's an effective way when I see people sitting on like all of these mutual funds, ETFs, stocks, whatever, that have really gained over the years, and they go, if I sell these, I'm going to have to pay so much in cap gains taxes, capital gains. No problem. Don't sell them. Just borrow against them, right? And actually, there's this whole strategy around that for people worth about 15 to 20 million and up, where they just never sell those things. They just constantly borrow against them, planning to die holding it. And then in the state blender that happens when everything gets tossed in and liquidated, and okay, the debt gets satisfied, but no tax gets paid because of how it's treated to the heirs. Like, that's really effective. Instead of paying taxes, you're just paying some low grade interest on the money until you die. Very effective. So, it's a great tool to expand businesses. I find most of the times business owners talk about debt, it's when they're actually acquiring a business. Seller financing can be amazing normally, just little installments, splitting that out. You could get a small business administration loan. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I see it when they're buying or when they're going into like a major scaling project. When they're like doubling down, a lot of times building a facility, a second facility. The idea is like they take on the loan because or buying more equipment because they're like, okay, well, we're going to double down our equipment. Even some people now, their investment in AI and their like tech stack and their like hardware that they're shifting into, like there are people that I see that are looking into that, but it's always it's a scale. Either you're buying the business or you're scaling. You're like expanding the business in kind of a scale, kind of a multiple format. And one thing I want to say, I think Caleb's you've done a good job, Caleb, pointing into this. This is a powerful lever, but it has big consequences. And this again is where you want somebody who knows the rules of the game and talk to them. I highly recommend you need to talk through somebody who specific one-on-one context, not just general, I read a blog post, I'm going to dive into this. Because with ADHD, we forget to calculate the risk. We'll look at it and go, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and we dive in. And this is the part where, as you move up, the pyramid, this like strategic debt, that is, it is a big, you can have a lot of leverage for you or against you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, you want somebody else's eyes who aren't hyper fixated on something. Like this is not a quick decision is really what I just want to make sure like we see things and we tend to be optimistic and we are driven by hope of what could be possible. And I always want to have somebody who's going, yeah, but. And if their yeah, but is little, okay, we can move forward. But if I'm ignoring their yeah, but, I'm about to just flush everything down the toilet.
Right. Well, honestly, man, some of my biggest partners I'm forging in this ADHD world are ADHD budget coaches. There's a lot of them. And they just exist because we have this issue with like shiny object syndrome. Oh man, I got to go buy that thing. it's a consumer
Yep.
expense or it's like an investment that goes wrong. Sorry, I'm fighting a sneeze here. Or like, oh, I just need to go take out another credit card because I get the free points or whatever. Like, it it is this massive thing that's either working for you or against you. I think you said that really well.
Yeah, the that idea of like it's exciting and the dopamine and everything, but you have to look at it and go, okay, do I think this is a good idea when the dopamine isn't rushing?
Right.
Like that's kind of how I have to go. Like, okay, can I walk away from this, do something boring, and come back and go, yeah, I'm still excited like this or not? And I need somebody else
Yeah.
to kind of help me with those conversations. I would say every client that I've dealt with, that's part of why I work with them is because we will chase all the neat things, but especially as we move up here, I think that's just a good way to talk about like the strategic debt is it is it's a little bit of a gamble. I mean, that's really what you're doing is you're doubling down on a bet with somebody else's money, and at some point they're going to ask for it back. Well, do you have a plan for that? And like you mentioned, in my business and the way we're building ours, we are not looking to take on debt because I joke with people all the time when this topic comes up. I'm like, I am building my business for money to flow one direction. It's like sewage. I want it to go one direction, not backwash. That's how I'm doing mine. But there are other businesses, like you mentioned, that you do need capital to jumpstart or to, start a new location, to open another facility, to scale. Like that, investors, that it is a great lever to pull at the right times.
Right. It's like a whole big thing in some of the top MBA programs now is all about entrepreneurship through acquisition. There's so many retiring boomers and so many millennials and Gen Zers who'd be great operators who just need to figure out how to financially purchase one of these
Yeah.
businesses and roll it. So yeah, let's move up from there into the next one. So once you got like all these pillars, so just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once you have shelter over your head to keep yourself dry, you have fire to stay warm, you have food in your belly, now you can start thinking about the next thing. So from here, it jumps up to diversification. So I know that's like every financial advisor's favorite word. It like instantly makes it feel like I'm wearing a suit and a tie, maybe some suspenders, puffing a cigar in my office, talking about diversification. But like it is real. Warren Buffett's got one of the most honest quotes on this I found, which is that concentration builds wealth, but diversification preserves wealth. I think that's very true. So many financial advisors get that wrong and they just say, oh, diversify, that's how you grow wealth. Sure, that works. Concentration can blow that out of the water. Most hedge fund guys out there underperform the market all the time, but they win massively on some huge bet on some random little company they took a 50% stake in with all kinds of debt and leverage attached to it. They blow it up and become billionaires, and that's how they become hedge funders that we know of. But
Honestly,
yeah,
with entrepreneurs, we are concentrated. We are
oh,
hedging a lot of bets on our company. And like you're saying, I think what you're saying is like, if correct me if I'm wrong, but we are building our businesses. We are concentrating on that this business is going to have a return on investment. But eventually, like we have that return. Now you're saying to like Warren Buffett, it's like, okay, now you've made wealth. Now how do you hang on to it? How do you make sure that it sustains? Well, that's diversification.
totally. Yeah, and you don't really need to have this conversation in a ton of detail until you're here, right? If you're still dropping 10 grand a year in unnecessary taxes that you really don't need to be, then you don't even need to think about like, oh, I need to drop 4 grand into my 401k. What should my allocation be? Like, let's get to that next. Let's talk taxes first. But then, like, once we get to this point, that's when it does start to come into play. Like, your business is one asset, sure. Your house is another. If you have rental properties, those are some. But think about ideally like a solo 401k for the sole proprietor, or I should say the solopreneurs out there. One man shows they can have a very part-time associate. Then you can think about larger 401k plans for the company, simple IRAs. There's all kinds of different names for different corporate level retirement accounts. The most expensive of them are probably just a couple grand a year at most to have open. Many of them are basically free. So that would be my encouragement if you're listening to this saying, oh, I don't have a plan in my company. Probably just go get one. You can find it reasonably enough. If it's just you, if it's other people and you want to help them in that way or not, there's just a lot of different options you have available. There's no one right fit. But my point is that you need assets not just like in a house and in a business, you really need it also in a bunch of other businesses. And that's all the stock market is. It's just shares of other people's businesses. And it's a very effective tool that Americans get to use to reliably grow wealth and really just to preserve it. As we said, like concentrating, that's why business owners make up an overwhelming majority of that ultra high net worth group I talked about, the 30 million plus, is because they own businesses, they sell them someday for tons and tons of money. Like that 5 to 10 million world's dominated by high paid white collar, like engineers, doctors, lawyers. But once you go past that, then like that's all the realm of business owners and occasionally celebrities and stuff. So did you have something you wanted to share here?
Nope, I'm just nodding. I'm like, yep. So I was in my mind. You said, you just own part of somebody else's business, and I just imagined myself walking in and to Costco and being like, "This is my cart. Like, this is the one I own."
This one right here.
Yeah,
I've heard of people doing that on like Disney cruises. I think there's something with stockholders years ago. So yeah, but it is really crucial when you're starting to think, okay, I've got all these other things handled here. I don't just want to count on my business being worth something someday. Sure, I can influence that now, but if I set it aside in other ways, at least I know I'm good. Like I have this good friend, very successful, several time over entrepreneur. He has a financial advisor with kind of a basic old school brokerage firm I tease him about because he's paying a lot for not much, frankly. And he told me, he's like, this little bit here that I have with you, Mr. Advisor, like that's just so you can tell my wife that we're going to be okay, that we can preserve our income and our lifestyle right now, should I die or not, or like all the way through retirement, just so that. And then all this, like the rest of the iceberg, that's not just the tip, all of this is his business stuff that's just crazy town, like that he's running. And I just think that makes a ton of sense for a lot of business owners. So like at least get your house protected, and for your spouse too, like get on the same page, and then just go swing for the fences on everything out there. Maybe there's some kind of impact greater than yourself in there. That's where we're heading next with some of the legacy and the exit planning. It's like if you do have excess, like we stocked the pantry so full with our runs to Costco, we've got a lot of random old cans of beans here we're not going to eat in our lifetime. Now we need to think about who's getting those. So going on to exit planning becomes the next one, because the reality is every one of us is going to exit our business someday. Is it going to be on our timeline, or if we die prematurely or the business goes under? We can really engineer what that is. And just to shorten this topic, which could be 3 podcasts in and of itself, let's just assume that you're planning to sell it to someone in some way someday. That's probably going to be the case for most of you listening to this, whether that's a kid, competitor down the street, a private equity buyer. And that listing there was not by accident. I just ranked those who will pay you the least to the most: your kid, the competitor, the private equity buyer. A lot to think through there, right? I don't know about you, Jake. I look at my family size and I'm like, maybe one of them will take it over someday. That'd be awesome. Zero pressure for me. If they don't, I'll just go get a big check when I'm very old and gray. And yeah, have you thought about any of this at all?
Yeah, we've thought about it, talked through it, and so far, none of my kids, I mean, my youngest is 8, they're like, no. Like, they're not interested in what I do. I mean, but what they know is like, oh, Daddy stands up and talks to people on the computer most of the time. Like, that's what they know of my job. It's like, it may become something. It may be something that it is a job. We're building it so that it's something that if the kids do want, they can carry it forward. If somebody else, it will be a sellable asset. If somebody else wants to take it on, they want to carry the book of business forward, great. But at the same time, if nothing else, the last case scenario is it's a job that gets me to the yacht called retirement. It's like when we decide that we need to be taken care of, it gets us to that point. So we are working toward it. We just have to decide what we want it to be. But in any case right now, like I am very aware that there is some kind of exit. Worst case scenario, it is I shut down my laptop and walk away from it and get nothing else out of it. Like that is the lowest level, But yeah, I think a lot of people don't even think, like, for me, it's what is the worst case? How do we make sure there's a plan for the worst case? How do we make sure there's a plan for the best case? I just want to make sure that both of those are there so that any decision I make can't ruin our plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's me protecting from my ADHD. Yeah, 10 years down the line, did I do something stupid?
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's
in
huge, man. That's
in talking to a lot of clients, I'll talk to I talked to an agency owner, a marketing agency owner this week, and one of the things like he hadn't gotten to the point where he was even thinking about it, and he like I thought one of the partners started it, and the other partner bought in, kind of like bought and replaced one of the founding partners, and neither of them had a plan for exit or what was going to happen with this thing. And I was like, well, how do you know if you're not how do you know if you're being successful if you don't know where you're going?
yeah.
Like that was my question, and it's like, okay, well let's set it with that for some time of what is the exit? When do you know that this ship is no longer taking you toward your destination? And that's how I think about it a lot is I should have something for me and my family. We're going down the path somewhere. And this job, this business is a vessel. It's a boat that is taking me down the river. At some point, there may be a fork in the river where I need to go east and the boat's going west.
Mm.
I mean, worst case scenario, you jump off the boat and let it hit the bank. Like,
Mm.
is that doable? Or can you sell the boat? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's how I have a lot of people think about it is the boat taking you where you want to go? Well, what do you do when the boat isn't heading in the same direction that you are?
Right.
So, sorry, I just chased all those rabbits. Yeah.
No, that's cool. To cap this topic off in the interest of time, I just want to hit there's 6 factors that really drive the valuation of a business, and these are ones I just work with on clients all the time, right? Harvard Business Review found this out years ago in polling the private equity industry, whose job it is at a very large scale to price and buy and sell businesses. So the 6 factors that really determine your company's valuation. These really, you can change them like today. The best time to start is now, not 10 years from now, right? There's an old Chinese proverb that's about the best time to plant a tree to get shade from it is 10 years ago. The next best time's today. It's like that now. So like work on it with these things. So number 1 is weighted forecasts of growth in company revenue. In other words, like, are your earnings growing consistently over time? Is this a growing thing, stagnant thing, or kind of dying thing? Weighted forecasts of growth in company margin. Revenue and margin are 2 very different things, obviously. Patterns of cash return to shareholders. That's huge. When you look at old classic profitable companies, Costco is even a great example here. The phone companies, Verizon and AT&T, are great, known for being good dividend payers, and that's just returning cash to shareholders. So in terms of you and I, like, do our businesses return cash to us, or do they just need to keep eating them to keep funding all of our our tech subscriptions, our insurance policies? That's about it for us. So marketing collateral. Changes in the company's debt to equity ratio. That's big. Has somebody just taken out a big loan against the company to do something? Or are they just pretty stagnant and low there? The economic conditions in the company's industry. So that's really important. We talked about Kodak and film earlier. That really impacts the value. That's why AI companies right now, brief segue. So like for your average plumber in Main Street America, he might sell his business someday for like 3 or 4 times what he gets paid from it ish per year. Let's pretend plumber Joe makes $100,000 a year. He sells that thing for $350K someday. It's actually pretty reasonable estimate there. That may or may not include his van, his pipes, and his tools. Yeah. But let's say plumber Joe opens up plum.ai. That's some AI company that helps plumbers solve problems. Well, he's probably now in today's AI crazy environment able to sell that thing for like 8 or 9 times multiple, 800, 900K, if he's somehow having his algorithms do PVC piping. Market volatility. This is the last one. Market volatility in the geographic areas in which the industry's major companies compete. This one's interesting too. So this is really like what's going on in the place where the industry's major companies are. So like Silicon Valley, well, no, I'll just pick on New York for a second here because I've been seeing all these jokes lately. Real estate companies in New York have just been diving off a cliff recently after the new mayor announced a wealth tax on people there, just taxing real estate that's hanging out but don't live in New York all the time. And so people are just laughing like, oh man, Miami real estate is suddenly just going through the roof right now. Because everyone who's like, what? New York's going to charge money? Well, forget that. I'm just going to sell my New York $200 million penthouse and go buy one in Miami instead. Like that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. But with businesses, right? If you have a business that's doing great work and I don't know, you're in Dallas, like if you have a quintessentially local thing, like maybe people there love to buy cowboy hats, but then suddenly Dallas gave up cowboy hats one day, then like obviously that impacts your purchase price.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever going to happen, is it?
No.
Oh, um, anyways, that's the six factors there of that affect your business pricing. And all of these things are stuff you can deal with now, like getting SOPs in order, getting systems and people in place, paying your people well, potentially granting them little bits of equity in the company really impacts the value of it. Interestingly, if you know any health foods, you've probably seen that Bob's Red Mill. Like apparently Bob and his Red Mill make like every kind of grain under the sun in like the flour aisle, very organic stuff. Well, I have a friend who knew him, and I think he was there that day that Bob announced to his employees. He just kind of like came down from his office and was like, "Hey, everybody, you're all part owners now. It's employee owned." It had this really interesting effect. So like all of his employees' net worths suddenly did really well because they're attached there. It's a very generous act, and that was what it was intended to be. And I had the full story in my book actually on this chapter. That's why it's coming to mind right now. But he talks about, I'm sorry, as you go on and watch the story unfold, the business gets worth a lot more money because suddenly the employees are that much stickier. The machine is so
Yep.
built that like Bob cashed out his shares and they were worth so much more just because it's this repeatable, reliable machine that impacts the price. And then legacy as our last one. This is the little golden triangle on top of the green pyramid here. So this is like the cap. There's no all-seeing eye on it or anything, but I think you get the image. Building and leaving behind a legacy. Like for most business owners, this is something really top of mind. I always, I don't know about you, I'm kind of a Hamilton nerd a little bit. All things Revolutionary War, but I think he had some line about legacy being a garden that you planted seeds in, you never get to see them sprout. So I don't know if that's true or not, but what a legacy is from a business standpoint, like who are you leaving this company to? What lives have you touched? Yes, all of those things are huge, like the brand you leave behind, but also like what about the assets here? Like you've grown this thing, you've ridden the little boat out to the yacht, and now the boat's there. Like, are we going to tell stories about it and will our kids and our grandkids? Or is it going to persist? And are we going to have more people's children and grandchildren work this after you leave it someday and have a long tenured company? And then what about your money? Are you leaving some to charity? Oh my word. If there's one area that is just like easy pickings for helping people save a lot of money on taxes, do more for their goals, like it's charitable planning. It is rarely ever done correctly, like completely correctly. And that's just for mass affluent people. People with funky situations like businesses and rental property, even more so. Um, so many different tools you can use both in your lifetime and at death. Even if you're just giving a couple grand a year, let alone if it's like 10, 20, 50K or more per year. So much that can happen under this legacy umbrella that can save on taxes. But more importantly, just think through meaningfully, like who am I endowing some of this excess with? Like I only need about 5 million to fund my current lifestyle from age 50 until I presume to die around age 90. But supposedly I'm going to have like 40 million at that time. Maybe I have like 10 right now. Okay, well that's great, but like what am I going to do with that? My kids don't need all that. I don't want them to get spoiled. Like I had nothing when I started. I want them to not have the similar pain, but like have some skin in the game on this. What do I do, right? And so like, do we set up a private family foundation, and then those kids help to pick who that foundation writes grants to, which charities? You know, there's so many different options there. Charitable trusts, donor advised funds. This is an area that really excites me. Like we talked a lot about our faith angle here too, and as one who really loves to engage in kingdom work, man, this is where you get to see the best of it, right? Business owners have very unique tax opportunities that can really save them. Like even while they're still running the business, putting chunks of the business into a donor advised fund and not paying as much tax on that because all their giving is just directly flowing out. Like the more generous you are, the more tools are in your arsenal for legacy.
Nice.
What do you think of when you think of legacy here?
Yeah, I honestly, this sounds really funny. I try not to too much because it's like I have to focus on what's here. I can't daydream out there. I'm
Mm-hmm.
driving hard to get there. Like I'm working my way up the pyramid, if you will. You know what I mean? It's like I'm working my way up. I know that it's out there. I know legacy. Basically, the legacy I look at it is I am building a company from scratch. I don't know if anybody's going to carry that company, but I am building assets for me, for my family, and I want there to be, um, I want there to be some tough decisions. Like you mentioned, like you get to it and you go, but what do we do with this? Like how cool is it? That's a problem I'm not necessarily experiencing right now. That's what I want to move toward. And that's kind of the way I look at legacy is we have some giving and things like that in place as we grow, um, but it is not my life right now. It is not my current existence. You know, but to kind of circle back a little bit, we've talked about all these, the different stages. Well, there's like eight, right? And it's kind of like, where are we? Which ones do we need? Where are we? Which ones do we need to check the box? Which one do we need to bring in somebody to have that conversation, the friend that knows the rules? Um, I want, like, you've done a great job explaining this, Caleb, and kind of giving me hope and everything, but at the same time, highlighting it is really complicated. And I feel like this is one of those places where the government and the world, they've made it more complicated than it probably even needed to be.
Oh my
And on
gosh.
top of that, it's one of those places where if you have ADHD, the cards are stacked against us. Because it's just not, either you love it or you don't. And if you're not in it all day and loving it, then you look at it, it's just overwhelming, and we just don't get around to it. Which means we're paying higher tax. I mean, we've all heard ADHD tax, like, oh, well, my ADHD flared and I messed something up. I just have to pay that. I just have to foot that bill. Well, that could get very expensive in this scenario. And at the same time, it's just like, you could go to jail if you do some of this stuff wrong. So it's like, don't do that. And it's not just you, your kids, your family, your employees. Like, it could affect a lot of people. But simply, they're just things in order that can be managed in order. Some of it you can do, some of it you can do online. Like, I mean, what is it? Tax? No. Zip something. I don't remember. There's like the online lawyer people where you can like file your business. Yeah,
Yeah.
LegalZoom. I think it's like $50 to like actually like register your business. Like you are now set up with it's that can be done relatively quickly. Check a box. Talk to somebody. As you move up, it gets more complicated. It gets messier. The risk of win loss gets a bigger gap. So it is. I guess what I want to say is it is simple. Does not mean doing it yourself is easy.
Mhm.
Like these are the steps. Get the help that you need. Figure out where you are. First step on this. Look at it. Where are you on the 8 levels? And just go, okay, well, what's the next thing I need to do to ensure, to get my money, to protect my business, to protect my family, to protect my people? What is the next step you do? Start at the bottom, work your way up. What's the next one you need to do? I know where I am.
Yeah.
I actually, honestly, I'll be open. I need to go back and review some of the tax planning stuff because that's we've had some shifts this year that I just need to go. We need to review that.
Yeah, I feel like that was the living, breathing one though. Like most people, ideally, and just to kind of repeat it for those of you listening who don't have the graphic in front of you, the bottom one is entity choice and asset protection. Like, hopefully that one's already locked down. That one should get caught pretty quickly if you go see a competent professional. Business and personal insurance, same with that, lockdown. Cash reserves and liquidity. Try to get to a year if you want to go 6 months of cash-ish investments, like ultra short bonds, money market. That's great. Another 6 months and something pretty conservative and similar. And then you get to those living, breathing. Well, there's tax planning, strategic debt if you want, diversification, and like that. I don't know. That's where a lot of people live. Like you're living there, I'm living there, and then once there's like something big and meaningful built, I think that's when a lot of people start hovering into that exit planning and legacy, but sometimes it's too late. Like, you should have been thinking about those earlier on as well. But yeah, I agree. Like, figure out where you're at if you're listening to this, and then you can figure out what kind of help you need exactly. So yeah, we should probably get this wrapped up here, and I think I've already gone long-winded enough on it a bit. But just to, again, encourage, like, I'll have this PDF in the show notes and a link to this on the website. I give a much deeper treatment of basically this whole founder's hierarchy of financial needs in particular in my book. In the second half of it, the money guide for ADHD business owners. I do not mean to pitch you my book at all, so as soon as I actually get that published, I'm going to be giving it away for free, audiobook and ebook form. May or may not be in the show notes at time of you listening to this, hopefully. But Jake has written way more books than me, and I'm positive they're better than mine, so go check his out too. I don't know if you want to plug those.
No, we're good. I want to thank you, Caleb, for unpacking this, because I know this is a scary, unknown, overwhelming territory for a lot of us. So thank you very much. And if y'all have questions, reach out, comment, whatever, look us up. We're both hanging out on LinkedIn on the regular. It's an okay place to be ADHD and be disruptive on LinkedIn over there. And then I just want to say, remember, we talk about this. This is your business. You get to change the rules. So have a good one. Hey, welcome to the Doing Business with ADHD podcast. Have you ever noticed how getting work feels personal, doing work feels overwhelming, getting paid feels awkward, and building wealth feels impossible? It's not because you're bad at business. It's because your business wasn't built for ADHD. Let's change the rules.